Welcome everyone. We're so glad you're here to join us. This is the 12th year that CPA Practice Advisor has been broadcasting this December CPE event. I'm Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor. And at this conference, we want to give you a little bit of introduction to what you're in for, especially if this is the first time you've ever attended. Each session is a panel discussion featuring a combination of well-known experts and practitioners sharing their real-life experiences, their successes, and their challenges about whatever topic we're discussing in that session. Each session is also interactive, meaning that you can use the Ask a Question box that appears on the bottom of your screen under this window to send questions directly to us here in the studio, and we can present those to the speakers while we're live. We'll try to incorporate as many questions as possible during this session. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Can't guarantee they'll all be read out loud, but we'll do our best. In addition, if you're having any technical issues with problems with the program or questions, we have people standing by who can help you and respond to your questions directly. On the top of your screen, you'll see an email address and a text number that you can contact if you have any problems that you need assistance with. Okay, I would like to mention that ensuring success would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. And those sponsors include ADP, Avalara, Canopy, CPA.com, Digits, eFile4Biz, Field Guide, Carbon, Count, WriteWorks, SafeSend, SureLink, ValueInsights.ai, Wolters, Kluwer, and Xero. And this session in particular, as you may notice by the logo material around here, is sponsored by Wolters Kluwer. Ensuring Success 2025 would not exist without the support of all those sponsors, so we really appreciate their help with this. And as for getting continuing education credit, CPE credit, there will be 3 breaks during each session. At each break, we will display a 3-digit CPE code on the bottom of your screen. It's up to you to write down this 3-digit code. So at the end of the session, you will have 3 3-digit codes. That's 9 digits for any of you who aren't accountants out there. When you're ready to collect your CPE certificates, you'll go to the top of the screen where it says CPE-CE credits. You don't have to do that today, but you can, or you can do it tomorrow, you can do it next week, next month. This link will be live, this page will be live for a year. So anytime during the next year, if you need copies of your certificates for this event, you can go back to that page. You'll be asked to enter the email address you used to register. If you're watching this and you haven't registered yet, and you go to that page, it'll ask for your email address. It'll say, we don't recognize you, and then it'll ask you to register. And then you can download your CPE credits, certificates. We want to make sure that you see the code when we show it on screen and that you're not dozing off or turning your back to the camera. So to make sure that you know that we're posting a CPE code, you will hear this sound. And that's Alexandra with the bell that will they'll announce that there's a CPE code on screen that you need to write it down. Okay, so this is session 1 of 14 that we're going to have over the next 2 days. And I want to point out the fact that you who are with us right now have the lucky opportunity to be able to call yourself 14-hour warriors if you stay with us for all 7 sessions today and all 7 sessions tomorrow. So only the people who are here in this first session will have that great honor of being 14-hour warriors. So good luck to you. We hope you stick with us for 2 days. Okay, this session number 1 of 14, is called Inside the AI-Enabled Firm, How Applied AI Accelerates Productivity and Growth. And you might hear that term AI quite a bit during the next 2 days because everybody seems to be talking about it. So we're going to start right off by talking about this. First, I want to introduce our panel members. I'll introduce them by name and then they can introduce themselves to you real briefly. So next to me, I have Aaron Burson and then TJ Lewis, Kathy Rowe, and our co-moderator, Alexandra. So let's have brief introductions from each of you. Go ahead, Aaron.
Sure. My name is Aaron Burson. I'm a CPA out of New York, and I started and run my own firm that we focus on outsourced controller, CFO work, and digital transformation inside other accounting firms and our clients.
And I'm TJ Lewis. I've spent the last 10 plus years in the accounting space in mostly product and operations roles. The last few years have been dedicated to AI through building products and then also helping folks implement within their firms. So that's what I bring to the table.
Great. And I'm Kathy Rowe. I lead our U.S. professional business at Wolters Kluwer. And I've been in the software industry for 20 years at Wolters Kluwer. And prior to that, I was a CPA working in both the small firm as well as the Big Four.
And I'm Alexandra DeFelice, Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer for JMBM Law Firm in Los Angeles. I'm Gail's moderator and 14-hour warrior through all of this and designated bell ringer.
All right. So before we dig into the various aspects of what we're going to discuss about AI in this session, we think there ought to be a moment or two to discuss what is AI, how do we define it, how are we going to be using that in this session and through the rest of the conference when we happen to mention it here and there. So these guys are all pros on this, way more than I am, so I'm going to have them explain what AI is and what you should know about it. So, Aaron, you're right next to me. You get to be picked on first.
Hot spot. So, I mean, I think AI is obviously a term that everyone's throwing out there to mean pretty much everything that we talk about in this space right now, mostly generative AI and large language models. But this is everything from machine learning to data extraction, machine vision, the LLMs we're talking about, and everything in between. So it's a kind of a big umbrella term, so just remember that throughout all the conversations.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I see exactly the same way. It's really a spectrum. AI has been around for decades, really fueling exponential innovation over the years, from robotic process automation right through generative AI. And now this year, the new word is agentic AI, which we'll talk about. But it's not new, but it feels new in the sense of the new capabilities for sure.
Yeah, and I think really what we're talking about is, to your points, it does cover a spectrum, but I think most people now, when we hear AI, we're thinking more on the lines of the ChatGPT, right, kind of thing, because for a consumer, that's really the first time that I, as a consumer, as a non-technical person, have been able to interact directly with an AI of any sort, right?
So you think.
Yes, true.
You've probably been using it in tools for years and not even realized it.
Right.
Just not the same generative type of AI.
Correct.
Which I think it's interesting because like accountants, everyone always thinks that, oh, you're a CPA, you're an accountant, you do tax.
Yeah.
Right? So now everyone talks about AI and it's like AI, okay, you're ChatGPT.
Right.
Whereas that's not the reality.
Yeah.
It's just one flavor of what AI is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Xerox of the copier world.
Yes.
It's becoming ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And Kathy, you mentioned agentic AI, so can we get a little more detail of what you mean by that?
Yeah, so these are agents that are essentially, I think of them as agents that you can put to work for you, really enabling keeping kind of a human in the loop, or we like to say the expert in the loop. And it really ranges from a simple tasker agent that does simple routine tasks, like categorization for your expense reports or something like that, to more autonomous, which they are able to look at end-to-end workflows, being able to ingest data right through populating a tax return. To collaborators is another type of agent. So again, really being able to collaborate with you, really augmenting human judgment, right through to orchestrators. So an orchestrator is exactly what it sounds like. It's an orchestrator of multiple agents to really go through complex workflows.
And I think you were talking, Kathy, like from a simple example, if you start from personal use and then transfer it over to professional use, that if you have a Gmail account, right, they're already doing that for you.
Absolutely.
Explain that, how that's happening.
Yeah, like your email comes in and it's just really categorizing, those agents behind the scenes categorizing where your emails, what bucket it should go into.
Different tabs that didn't used to exist. Like,
And
you
now-
should care about this, or maybe this is
Exactly.
just something
And what I'm finding now just in my personal Gmail is like, ooh, you haven't had a follow-up to that. So you're getting those prompts. Or even in writing an email, you're getting the prompts and all you have to do is click tab and your sentence is written for you.
Yeah.
Simple things like that.
And those are the kinds of things that Aaron was mentioning. Like, those are the things that have been added into software that we've been using that are ways that we have been interacting with AI, maybe unknowingly or just sort of getting added in.
Yeah. Well, another really simple example is chatbots. They've been around for a long time. And I don't know about you, but when I've come to a chatbot, I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm not going to get canned answers. But we've been starting to use them within our support world, large language models within our chatbots. So the answers that are returning are much more intelligent. And you get links to data much more quickly that are much more relevant. So it's interesting to even see the evolution of the chatbot using large language models.
It's so funny. Like literally, we just got a question from the audience before you said those words that said, "I want to know more about chatbots and how I could use them in my firm." And I'm like, what's happening? Who's taking over this session right now? So. Sorry, I think we have to pause before I get into that.
I want to hear more about chatbots too. But before we do that, we're going to take our first quick commercial break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsor, Wolters Kluwer, and when we come back, we'll have your first CPE code for this session. All right, we're back, and now if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see the first CPE code for this session. Be sure to write down this 3-digit number because you'll need it if you're planning on collecting a CPE certificate for this session. All right, we were talking about chatbots. Everybody's seen chatbots, right? You've run into them more often than you'd probably like to. But I'd like a little more information about how they're being used in the accounting profession.
Yeah, I can jump right in. We have within our CCH Access platform and even our Pro System FX solutions, we have an advanced virtual agent, otherwise known as AVA, internally at least. And it's contextual within your workflows. So if you're working on anything at all within our experience, you can ask it a question and it will return the answers and any knowledge base articles. And again, it's using those large language models to make sure that it understands with your natural language what you're actually looking for to return the most relevant results. On top of that, if you call into support and you want to talk to a human, we actually have our support agents be like real people in this case, using also the large language models so that they're able to answer the questions in a smarter way faster. So we're using them both with contextual within the workflow, but also behind the scenes as well.
Interesting. So you may think you're talking to a live person, but they're still going to the same source
we're
you can do on your own.
them, and I think that's really important because we're using tools in our whole software development lifecycle to use AI to develop faster with higher quality that's more relevant, in addition to putting it in the user experience.
I think that's the place that I've seen it used the most in the profession so far is with the vendors, because you guys have these repositories of information that we want access to or to navigate easier that then having those LLMs have that context makes it tremendously quicker and easier. So I think that's where I've seen it the most, but then I've seen some firms starting to layer it in with like client interactions or inside their portals, or having a way for a client. I think QuickBooks did this at one point and Xero also does this, where you can chat with their like AI bot and ask it questions around your financial data and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, just to build on, the simplest example I gave was just the support experience, because that's more relevant to you every single day. But what we were just looking at the commercial break is a new solution called CCH Access Intelligence. But what that is, it's really the evolution of research in the software experience. And what's relevant about that, as we're talking about chatbots, it's not a chatbot, but it's a co-pilot-like scenario where you're able to ask it questions with natural language, and it will help you get the answers that's grounded in authoritative content with the clickable citations, being able to do exactly what you said, create that client correspondence on the fly. So it's really
kind of find what you're looking for easier and faster. I mean, I've seen a lot of people start using it almost like as a Google 2.0, right? Like that's how they search and look for stuff, but you have to be careful with the hallucinations and everything, like you said, grounded in the authoritative content, because you're curating it.
Exactly.
Right? Which I think that's one of the big differences between a bot or a co-pilot that a vendor is making versus like ChatGPT out there.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's critical that you're thinking about the traceability, the auditability, like having that confidence on where the answers are coming from is really super critical.
And that it's real.
One of the things I think is important, given the use case you're talking about there, certainly, CCH has access to a lot of context, right? You've been aggregating customer support calls and emails and all of that. And so for a chatbot to be successful, generative AI specifically works really well on sort of all the fuzzy stuff, It's, we were talking at the break, just sort of before when I'm typing in something, it has to match sort of keywords or things like that to go find the relevant document. But now it doesn't have to be so much. And I'm curious, just, from a product side, are you seeing, even a year ago, 18 months ago, the chat bot interaction was still pretty rough, but I think it's improved so much.
It has improved, but it is key that they have access to a platform of data and being able to harness that data and triangulate it across multiple sources. And that's really only possible if you're able to work on platforms that have already been built API first, because that's a really prerequisite to be able to have agentic workflows, because you're exposing those endpoints of the data in a different way. So absolutely.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing I wanted to, to make it practical for our firms out there, right, is the more context you have access to, the better you're going to be at providing kind of advice across the board, not just siloed in tax or client accounting.
Yeah, it's really about harnessing the data to be able to drive automation and harness those insights.
So you guys mentioned a couple things that that you may take for granted, but I'm not sure that our audience knows exactly what these terms are. Large language models, generative AI, and co-pilot. Do you want to dig into each of those just a little bit more so people understand exactly what we're talking about?
Who wants it? Go for it. So LLMs, the large language models that we've been talking about, really, those have been around for a little while now. ChatGPT was sort of the first one to make it, widely available through OpenAI. Their GPT-3, I think, was the first one that they kind of went public with. But yeah, large language models are really, it's ingesting the world's knowledge, right? And at first, what was it, 2015? I don't remember the timing. It started with specific corpuses of information. It was book corpus, it was LexisNexis, and then over time it's evolved to now it's really hard to say what's in the model. It's whatever it can get its hands on. And so I think that's what we're talking about, large language model and the GPT functionality of accessing the information that's in there.
Yeah, and I think the co-pilot version of that, I think a lot of companies have kind of released that. It's essentially that large language model, but then has some kind of proprietary data set behind it that it's kind of trained on and accessing, kind of like what you're talking about, where it's accessing all of your support documents, your information, and then serving that up, but then has the LLM kind of reasoning model behind and predictive model behind it to understand the context of all of that. Yeah. So that's kind of like a specially trained version of a larger language model.
Okay.
if that makes sense.
I think so. So it's sort of the
like your
evolution
specialist.
of the
Yeah.
generative AI.
Yeah, so I mean,
Bigger,
generative
better.
AI is kind of just more just that it is generating something with AI, right? It's more predictive. That's how the large language models work. They're all predictive engines of what's the next most likely word to come in a sentence. They're not actually like thinking.
Okay.
So then the LLM is that kind of core of where it's weighted all these different parameters to make that prediction more accurate. Then copilots have that proprietary data set where it's kind of overweighting that data set as the information source that it wants to pull from versus the general like internet at large, so that it's more trained on that data set, right? And then you have generative AI, which all of that is, because it's generating content, in this case text, from all of that data.
Yeah, the other thing that we were talking about earlier is within those co-pilots, or like that's just the Microsoft term that I'm using generically, but you're able to use natural language to ask simple questions like you normally would. So it's that I think helps the layman or the everyday user just be comfortable with it to try. But the other thing that's interesting is you're able to actually tailor the master prompts so that it's getting customized for you, so that it's delivering concise bullets or not to use like dashes in your answers. So those are a few things that we were talking about, so that it feels more tailored to your personality, your persona, versus a robotic type of answer that everybody's like, oh, that's just the chatbot.
Yeah, and you can kind of tell when it's written by a chatbot these
Exactly.
days if someone hasn't adjusted that master prompt or
Yeah.
set of instructions of how it wants it to talk, more authoritative, more conversational, more formal, leaving out the M dashes, all that type of stuff.
Exactly. But the other concept that is really important when we think about these different models is human in the loop. And that's really critical for our industry because it's really, really important that we keep the CPA in the center so that they can really understand where answers are coming from, what data is being used, help them customize for their clients. Like, we can't automate that away.
Right. Yeah, you were talking, Aaron, about, as we talk about large language models, there is sort of and this is what WK, I assume, has done, right, with the tax research, is it's sort of augmenting with additional information that's specific to tax codes and regulations. And that's where the human in the loop is important. You can't just, especially when you talk about the general purpose large language models like ChatGPT or Copilot, they're trained on a certain set of data. Because we don't know exactly what's in there, it can misrepresent things or hallucinate, or maybe the most up-to-date codes aren't even in the model. And so that's where, leaning into specific models that are trained on that specific technology are really good.
Exactly.
And you can't just offload, you can't offload your judgment to these models. You do need to look at it with a critical eye in every case.
Absolutely. I mean, at Wolters Kluwer, we have very specific security responsible AI policies, so that A, we don't have hallucinations, B, you're not going beyond the boundaries of your data to introduce security risks. So that's paramount for our industry, but also Wolters Kluwer is really, really critical.
Yeah, it kind of brings a new meaning to the trust but verify statement, right?
100%.
Like, trust it to a degree, but also make sure you're checking those sources, making sure they're real sources, that it's actually interpreting that correctly. Because I've seen that a number of times where it can read the same code or code section, right, and interpret it one way, and then based on case law or the way that it's been applied in the past, that that's not how it should be getting applied. Like, it's not perfect. It's the same as any other person that you'd have on your team that can make mistakes.
But a very junior person is what we often say. I mean, maybe they get educated a lot faster than the junior person, but I think that's what we've kind of said as a best practice.
Yeah.
And then, are we going to have to stop for a minute before?
I think.
Okay, great. Because I would like to get more into the policies, right? Because one of the things I said was there's all this uncertainty. There's I thought there would be more questions about what's a prompt, how do you do this, what kind of things should you put in? But a lot of the questions that are coming in are just about, how do you know if they're hallucinating? How do you stop AI from coming up with their own references for legal or income, and putting out false false information, all that kind of stuff. So what are like if someone's going to create a policy and say this is what you can and cannot do, what are some basic things that should be in that policy?
Yeah, so I think first is within a firm, who is the decision maker? What are the stage gates? Like having very specific tools that are approved by the firm, that should be crystal clear. And what are the decision factors? Like when you're assessing new tools, what are the things you need to look at in terms of what are their security policies? How are they determining what the answers could be? Those are some critical pieces. And then making sure the firms have a process for the rollout. I think those are a few areas I'd start with.
And I think to like reference some of the questions that you said were coming in, right, of how do you prevent it from hallucinating or making up its own references, the shorter answer is you can't, right, because you don't control the LLM behind the scenes, right? So that's where the trust but verify, the policies around, nothing's coming out of the LLM or the chatbot and going directly to the client without a person looking at it, right? If you've seen it in the news, you've seen so many instances of, I think there was a lawyer that was disbarred for relying on it, and the cases were just completely fake, right? Because again, it's a predictive engine. It's predicting things. So like it will actually make up articles and be like, oh, this was an article about this. And then sometimes you'll ask for the reference. It'll give you a link that looks correct, but when you go to it, it doesn't exist because it just put like a URL that had like all the keywords in it, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
So I think like in those policies that you have to actually click on those verified links and make sure they're real and look at them to a degree, because part of it is we want to work faster and more autonomously, but there's that balance that you need to just kind of add professional judgment to.
Exactly. Just a clarification point, though, within Wolters Kluwer, the way that we're looking at it, just for firms to know, is that all the large language models are within the confounds of our boundaries of CCH access, so that you're not going to run into some of those areas. But that's what's really important when you're looking at your responsible and governance within a firm, is when you're assessing vendors, how are they handling it so that you don't run into situations like you have.
Yeah, and when I talk about that you can't prevent them from hallucinating, I'm more talking about the generic chatbots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the ChatGPT where you're talking to it, where it's accessing every piece of data it's ever been able to get to, as opposed to that more Copilot-esque version that is more weighted towards those true authoritative things, right? And has those guardrails put on it.
Yeah, sometimes in my just everyday, I'll actually say, what was the source of this, or where did this come from? And I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm going to base my decision on that.
Yeah. I think when we talk about policies too, Alexander, I think one of the things to just explicitly call that out and write that down in the policy to say, for these use cases, for tax research, we're going to use our CCH product. You're not going to, we would prefer you not to use ChatGPT for that because we don't know where the information's coming from.
Yeah.
And we know if we use CCH or whatever your tax research product is, you're going to be limited to just authoritative documents.
Exactly.
And also for protection of client data, right, which is another concern. Like, so if we're in my firm, which is a law firm, if we want to use ChatGPT, we cannot put client data in it. If we use Copilot, because it has that little green, it has to have the little green checkbox. It means it's not going outside of our walls, so we could put personally identifiable information.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to kind of what you said before about having, like, what are the approved places to use AI in that policy? Because you could have a business tier ChatGPT or Claude that has those protections built in, that then it's okay to put some personal data in there for client data in there, because it is walled off from training of future models and things like that, as opposed to the free public version or the personal version.
I think equally it's what's prohibited. So you should have clarity in terms of what's allowed and then what's prohibited, I think, and then who's going to govern the whole thing.
We're going to talk more about how it's used within firms, but first we're going to take another quick commercial break, learn a little bit more about our sponsor, Wolters Kluwer, and when we return, we'll have your second CPE code for this session. Welcome back. And if you take a look at the bottom of your screen now, you'll see the second CPE code for this session, second of 3. So be sure to write that down if you're planning on claiming CPE credit for this session. All right, and I think at this point we want to get a little more engaged in how this information is being, or these tools are being used within accounting firms. So shortly, when our screen clears, we're going to have a poll for you. Okay, Alexandra?
Yeah, so I'm going to launch it's a combined poll that's going to ask 2 questions that will help move this conversation along. And one is, do you have what we call a responsible use of AI policy, just what we were talking about. And the other thing that we want to know about is whether you have a firm account for AI tools or if you're just using it personally. So I'm going to launch this poll now. I'm going to keep it open for just a couple of minutes while we continue the conversation. So did you have a question that you wanted to throw out, or?
Well, I think we want to get back to how are firms actually using this day to day in their lives, and we'll get some information from this poll about how secure things are, I think. But what are the opportunities firms have, and maybe where are the danger signals?
Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, there's so many examples. So they range from simple things that you're probably doing in your everyday life that you can also do within the bounds of your firm. Being able to ask questions and find relevant data, be able to create that client correspondence, or even write emails to your staff. But when you go beyond that, and when you think through the tax end-to-end workflows or audit end-to-end workflows, I think it starts with how you're engaging with your client. So being able to understand which client you need to even do work with. So that's an example of advisory. So how I would think about using AI there is some of these new tools that are out there are letting you really understand what's changing in the legislation, being able to triangulate that against your client base and their tax data so that you can see, okay, there's tax planning and tax optimization opportunities for these 3 clients. So let me start engaging with them and start actually using the tools and getting those tax saving strategies to then creating those client correspondence. So that's one great example.
And I've seen that in action, and it's amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah, like you can identify the example that I've talked about is R&D credits, because it's not all the same. So it really depends on the specific clients, and being able to mine your data across your multiple hundreds of clients to find out which ones, and you could find $900,000 of savings. I mean, I'd like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is you're kind of pointing to the maturity of the landscape where we are now, because we've had all that data. We haven't, until recently, very recently, we haven't been able to do that kind of work with the data.
Right.
It's sort of been like, oh, I know I've got all these untapped potential opportunities laying there within my client base, but how do I even, up until now, we've had to go just think about, okay, well, I think I've got these few clients that probably fit that thing.
Yeah, and we want to enable our firms to be the trusted advisor, because that's really why they entered the profession in the first place. So it's really great to see that technology has advanced to really enable that now. So that's one example. The second example, really staying at that first end of the process, is again how you engage with your clients. So if you can imagine your client coming in with a shoebox of data to do your taxes, personal or professional, whatever it might, or business, whatever it might be, it's usually a shoebox of structured and unstructured data. The structured stuff is fairly easy, and the spectrum of AI has been able to handle that over the years to understand, your basic slips. That will continue, clearly, but now it's the unstructured data. So being able to understand that and decipher that with speed, and being able to create and match that to a request list, and even update that request list on the fly. That's all happening with those agents we talked about. And then it goes another step further, and that's using advanced technology to then take that data that's now deciphered and classified, and being able to flow that automatically in the tax return. Now, that was available before, again, mostly for the structured data. So if you think what's probably the biggest unstructured data is the K1. And so now like being able to solve that problem has exponentially, the speed of solving it has exponentially increased. So I think we're going to see a lot of great examples in that area.
It's funny because you're looking at the positive of like, oh, we can help gain efficiencies by filling this data in, and then we're getting questions of, but then won't AI allow people to do their own returns without a CPA? We're going to be replaced.
I really don't think so.
I don't think we're going to be replaced, but yes, some people will do the returns on their own. Others will realize that that's, again, that lower value tier of the service offering we offer as professionals, that yes, if all you're looking for is the compliance of getting the return done and filed, there will be systems out there. There already are systems out there. You take a picture of all your documents and the return is essentially done for you. But if you want that more advanced advisory flow, which is where the profession has been elevating to and people are still trying to elevate to, that's the value we bring to the table of staying up to date on the tax codes and the changes and how that can apply to someone's situation, and less on just the data input into a tax return.
I think it's really, I know there is that fear out there of, okay, well, what does it do to me? But it's really, we view it as keeping the expert in the loop, enabling the professional from a compliance standpoint, so you get that done faster with speed, and being able to pull out those insights to have a higher quality compliance workflow. But then it's to be able to not just increase the volume of that work to grow your business, but to also find those advisory opportunities. So it's really an unlock, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Congress keeps helping us by creating tax laws that give us options.
Yes.
First of all, they get
Absolutely.
more and more confusing, but also it's not black and white. It's, here's a situation like IRA contributions. Should you deduct it or not? And it becomes a personal thing for the client. Well, do you want to pay tax on it this year or 10 years from now?
What are your goals? What are you trying to
exactly.
do? Lower your tax burden or increase your savings for retirement, right? And having
that's
that
just
conversation.
one simple example, but there's so
Yeah.
many choices on tax returns. And the more there are, the better it is for us.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's really important right now, to kind of take a step back and think about, we talk about there will be some roles that will be more impacted than others, but I think as professionals in this industry, I think it's really important that we, if you've been sort of coasting and doing a job for the last several years and you haven't really thought about how do I advance myself, it's really important to approach this time with a growth mindset, because things are
Absolutely.
changing and roles are changing, and
Yeah,
the work that we
yeah.
do today will be different tomorrow,
Yeah. There's a phrase that has stuck with me. AI won't replace the professional, or CPA, but the CPAs that aren't using AI will be replaced
By the people who are.
by the people who are.
Yeah, AI is not going to fundamentally replace people. The people using AI will.
So, Aaron, that's a great transition into what we were talking about earlier about your culture of play. Can you the thing is this is always changing, right? So it's okay to play with it in a way and fail and start over. And if you failed today, it might work next time or something.
Yeah. I think that's kind of, and that theory is kind of rooted in where I started my career, doing a lot of work with startups where the whole concept is fail fast, right? But even in failing, you're not learning anything, you're learning what doesn't work, right? So then you can apply that learning to the next iteration and kind of just keep trying. But to the concept of just playing, right, is empowering your team to understand that it's okay to spend some of their time just trying new things, whether they work or not. And I think that comes back to the whole pricing conversation that we've been talking about for years. And I budget that I plan for my team to be 20%, not productive or not client work productive, and I want them to play during that time and actually try new things, see if it works, see if it doesn't work. Think about how could we use these tools differently, because I don't want that all sitting on my shoulders as a firm owner of how can I use this across the firm, because I'm removed from a lot of things that I used to not be removed from and the day-to-day, and I want them to really be like, can it do this?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
have that inquisitive mindset.
I think it's curiosity.
Yeah.
Well, and then how do you talk about it? I kept pushing this conversation off, even just from a marketing perspective with my firm. I keep telling them we called ChatGPT Chad, and we called Copilot Connie, and someone called it Aisha for AI, right? And I said, I want you guys to start sharing with me how you're using it. You're not going to get in trouble. It's not cheating. It's actually I'm applauding you because you're gaining efficiencies, and I want you to share it with the team. So how are you encouraging them to share that at a firm-wide level?
It's difficult because everyone thinks that, oh, if I'm not productive, I'm doing something bad, right? The way that I've done it is when I'm on calls with them, I'll be like, let's just, like if a question comes up, hey, let's try that and talk to I call it GNC for Claude and ChatGPT. Let's see what we could do with that. And actually, one of those times, I took an idea that we had on a phone call and put it in, and literally 5 minutes later, we had a replacement for a app that we were paying $10 to $15 per client per month for, and it was just out of oh, you hate that software doesn't do this thing. Let's see if we could do it better, right? And then just kind of playing with it and seeing where that goes.
So I think
like demonstrating it, I guess is.
Yeah, I think what's really important to grab onto here is Aaron is saying sort of from the leadership level, right? We are committed to trying this, and I think that's one thing that is interesting is that there in a lot of firms, the compensation models, the way everything's set up is it's really kind of unintentionally perhaps, but discouraging the innovation that is maybe lying there waiting to be found. And so these efficiencies and these gains are not happening because people are so caught up in doing things the way they always have and just getting the billable hour out the door.
Yeah.
Well, and then comes the scary topic, which comes up every year, right? Which is now if you get the gains and now it takes you less time to do it, how do you still get the same amount of money for your firm if you're still billing by the hour and you don't want to go to a different pricing model?
Don't bill by the hour.
I think it's going to be a forcing function
Yes.
to do that value-based billing that we've been talking about for years and years.
Yeah. I mean, or they'll end up taking on more clients in that now extra capacity they have, and they'll have the same 2,000 hours a year to bill out per staff, and instead of that handling 100 clients, they'll handle 200 clients because they'll be more efficient. But I think that'll lead into more burnout and other bigger issues that you'll have happen if that is the case. So I think it's we want it to be that forcing function. I don't think it will for a lot of firms because they're so stuck in the hourly billing because it's easy, and if they're doing all this ambiguous change over here, they want to be grounded in the easy thing that they've been doing for 30 years. So I hope that it is. I don't think it will be, but that's one way is they'll take on more clients.
So talking about disclosure, what do you feel that you need to tell your clients about your use of AI?
There's no
He's
good
like,
answer.
I'm looking at Aaron, I don't want to answer that.
There's no good answer.
There's no official regulation currently
Right.
as to what we have to do.
Right.
Right, and so I think it's sort of just best practices. I think what I'm hearing, and maybe you all can speak to this as well, what I'm hearing is it's maybe best practices to, in your engagement letters and things like that, to just say kind of in vague terms, like we do use AI tools to do our work.
Yeah.
And maybe that's all, just to kind of let them know.
Yeah.
That's what we do now in the engagement letter. Just like if we say we may use third parties to assist with the preparation of something, we have that in our engagement letter. But I kind of think about it I don't give my clients a list of every piece of software that I've ever used, or
exactly.
a list of the background of every staff member that's going to touch their work and what colleges they went to. So I'm of the camp that ethical disclosure, but not that, this sentence was generated from AI. I think that's
Exactly.
insane.
And what we found in working with firms is that there's an expectation from clients that they expect you to be using modern technology because they will get a better product and output.
I love how you keep foreseeing my question. So they do expect it, but then what we're seeing in our law firm, like for example, we had a lawyer send a demand letter to their client, and the client said, I like this better. And because they just put it in AI, and he's like, this is filled with all kinds of legal extortion, and this is wrong, and this is like atrocious. So I'm seeing like quickly it being like when WebMD first came out, and people are just self-diagnosing, doctor, you don't know what you're talking about, even though you've practiced for 40 years. Clearly, I know the answer because I went on WebMD. So what happens when you start producing a work product for your clients and they do it and say like, no, I think I could do it better?
I mean, I had that happen actually around like a tax strategy and what we were working with, and they had gone into ChatGPT on their own. They're like, oh, well, we could do these things. And 50% of them applied to them, the other 50% didn't. So at some point, I think it comes down to kind of as a profession and practitioners, we need to draw the line. Like if you're going to do, fine, you can do that. I disagree with it and withdraw from the engagement. And have those ethics to say, if you're going to do this all on your own, that's fine. But either you're going to pay me to review that and then actually bring it up to standards, or you're going to run with that and I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that there's kind of an ethical play on that. And we've always had that in the profession. If someone wants to take an aggressive tax stance that we don't agree with, we're supposed to withdraw from it and not do it, or at least educate them on all the potential risks associated with that, and then it's their decision.
But I think that's your opportunity to really shine as that trusted advisor and establish the importance in the profession.
Right, and point out how there is a difference between what the LLM is generating versus what has your X number of years of experience behind it, like in the law firm, right? You've seen this play out 20,000 times, right? And if they're using, I'm not saying this is the case, but if they're using one of the general LLMs, it's very possible that it's not basing that off factual information, right? Because there is that unfortunate hallucination reality in a lot of those still.
We're going to take another quick break for another word from our sponsor, Wolters Kluwer. And when we return, we'll provide you with the third CPE code for this session. All right, we are back. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see the third CPE code for this session. So be sure to write that down if you're planning on claiming CPE credit and getting a CPE certificate for this session. All right, I think we want to talk about what some of the poll results were from our
So, okay, well, the first question was, do you have a responsible use of AI policy? And 44% of the audience said no, but 30% said that they're considering it. So that is a good thing. However, with the question of does your firm have a firm account, 40% don't even have a personal or a professional account. And what's interesting is a lot of the people that answered the survey said they don't have an account, but they have a policy. So that's a little weird. I don't. Well, guess we'll see what's happening with that. Any commentary on that, guys?
I can't say I'm surprised at the number of people that don't have a personal or firm account, but I'm surprised at it at the same time, especially with how easy it is to get one, like a free ChatGPT or similar account.
I use it on my phone every single day.
Yeah. Every time I'm in the car for more than like 30 minutes, I actually open up voice mode with ChatGPT and I just brainstorm with it for the car ride.
You're
I just talk back and forth.
The third person that has said that to me this week, and I have to figure out how to. Like, they literally.
You need a paid plan.
Brainstorm.
Yeah, you need a paid plan, and then you start it, and it's that one where it like shows the little blue bubble in the middle of the screen.
Yeah.
And you just talk conversationally with it, and it's then using the LLM, and you can really get through a lot of brainstorming in a 30-minute car ride.
Do you do that with Copilot too, or just with ChatGPT?
I'm not sure. I know ChatGPT for sure. I think they might be the only one that has that true like voice dialogue.
Advanced voice mode,
Yeah, versus like dictation into text.
Right.
Like that you could do with any of them.
You know, I think just kind of looking at those numbers there, I think it's so important, you know, for those that have an AI policy and are still letting their folks use whatever tool they want, that I think that's probably the first place I would go is set up your team, you know, ChatGPT for Business account. And Aaron, you kind of alluded to it earlier. ChatGPT for Business does give you additional safeguards. You know, they're SOC 2 compliant. You can go look at their trust portal and go look at their terms and all of that.
Yeah.
It's definitely more safe. And And by buying that, it's what, $25 a month, you know?
Yeah,
It's, you know, I still am amazed at the pushback. I know we've been sort of inundated with software, so I understand that there's a lot of software we're being thrown at, but for $25 per user per month, to unlock the capability for people to be able to experience what generative AI is you will the ROI on that, you know, it's hard to quantify, which is difficult, but you will get your return on investment.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely recommend that as the first thing to do is set up a policy and pick a tool for your firm and pick 1 to 3 use cases and maybe a small group to ideate, like top 3 things this week, and then share it out on how you're going to use it.
TJ, when we were prepping for the call, the session, the panel, whatever you want to call this, you mentioned a couple things that going back to the policy, which is one of the things is who to go to with questions. And that's not necessarily the owner of the firm, right?
Correct. Yeah. Kathy, you've kind of mentioned it a couple times. I think it's important to identify whether you call it the AI champion or what, you know, whoever that person is that's sort of leading your AI efforts. And it may not be and probably shouldn't be the owner of the firm. But definitely outline who that is, what their role is, and what someone is to do. You know, if you've got a handful of things that you've described in your policy that are approved for use, what does somebody do if they come across a use case that isn't supported by those? You know, I may have something that is novel and I can't really make it do what I want to within ChatGPT. So who do I go to say, can we get this approved or can we explore this tool?
Yeah, and I think it's change management at the core of it, and it's nothing that we're not new to, right? Like we did this when we went to cloud adoption, right? I remember this exact same conversation. Have your cloud champion and this champion and that champion who's the one that you're giving authority to go super deep into the topic so that they know it better than anyone else. But I think having that, if we go back to having that play mentality, right? You do need, if you're saying these are the 3 use cases we're allowed to use it, you need to have a mechanism for the 4th, 5th, and 6th that you haven't thought about, and how to do that in a safe way to prevent shadow IT from being built within your firm and then not understanding it and not seeing it, especially with how the business plans work. They're still kind of black boxed, right? So as a firm owner, you don't see what your team members are chatting with AI about or what data they're putting in. You just know that it has these guardrails around it, and that's intentional by design. So that's where having that, kind of true, no judgment way to talk about it is really important in this.
And we said we have to be faster in adoption than we were with cloud, right? But it's less risky. Where your basic functions, your accounting systems were on premise, and we're trying to convince the world to move and put all their data they've had their whole life somewhere else. This is just like play with it a little bit, right? Like
I would disagree.
Of playing with it, we've just got like a minute left. And we wanted to give you guys some takeaways for how you can get started using some of these tools. So we had some ideas that we came up with. And I really want Aaron to describe his holiday shopping idea.
I don't even remember this.
You should use it for holiday shopping and price comparison.
Oh, yeah. If you're looking to buying X, just go to any one of the open source models or open models and just ask it to help you find the best price for that out there, because it can search 200,000 websites a lot faster than you can. And you'll find it, 9 times out of 10, or it'll find that obscure random mom and pop shop who's selling it for 25% cheaper.
Right, yeah. And what else? Some great things that people can do just tomorrow to just start getting accustomed to these tools.
I mean, I think probably the one big thing, especially for ChatGPT, if you haven't used a deep research, if you haven't done deep research, it's amazing at what it can do very quickly. If you're looking to generate a business plan or run a gap analysis or whatever framework analysis thing you're trying to do, just turn on deep research, put your prompt in there and just let it run for 8 or 9 minutes. It'll come back with all kinds of sources and a detailed plan.
Or it can be as simple as, sometimes what I do personally is I take a screenshot of financial data, again, within our safe confounds, and I'll ask it to do trends analysis for me. I'll ask for like anomalies. And what normally, if I take my calculator or Excel, it takes a lot of time. This literally takes 10 seconds.
And I think one other thing I just want to mention,
Real
because
quick.
we've talked a lot about ChatGPT. There's many different versions out there, and they all actually have strengths in different things. So
Yes.
don't just play with one. Like Claude is fantastic at making Excel models. You can make an Excel model that would take you weeks in minutes,
Yeah.
whereas ChatGPT sometimes struggles to give you a Word document. Right, so like you really need to find the strengths
right
of
for
each
you.
one and what you're looking to accomplish, and that'll change what tool you use.
Yep.
All right, thank you everyone. And as you can tell, we could talk about this all day long, there will be other references to AI throughout the rest of the sessions today. Again, we especially want to thank you who are here in the first session. You have the opportunity to be 14-hour warriors. And it occurred to me that while we're starting here at 8 in the morning in Dallas, if you're coming to us from the West Coast, you came to us at 6 in the morning. If you're here from Hawaii, you came to us at 4. Thank you so much. Maybe the Hawaii people stayed up for us instead of got up this early. But anyway, we want to thank you all. We're going to take a brief break between sessions. We'll be back at the top of the hour with our next session, which is called Taming the Chaos, Smarter Ways to Manage Client Documents. So we will see you then.